Serge Nubret.
Serge Nubret, generally considered to be one of the greatest physiques of all time. Today we're going to deep dive into his training and dietary approach for health, physique, strength, and longevity. The essence of his training philosophy was to love what you do, love being in the gym. He valued gym training above everything. So rather than extra running or extra cardio, he would be in the gym. And that was his additional activity for strength, physique, and health. In a nutshell, Serge's training is characterized by doing more and working harder, which is a stark contrast to the modern era where we have a focus on doing less, resting more, eating more, and lifting heavier. In a modern training session, you may only do 20 sets, and each set may last about 30 seconds, which means for an hour of training, you're perhaps only doing 10 minutes of actual exercise. That's a work to rest ratio of 1:6. People love to say train harder, sure, but Serge might retort that some of these guys are hardly training. Whereas you consider Serge's approach was all about health and longevity. In a given training session, he would do sets lasting 30 to 45 seconds, followed by 30 seconds or less of rest, which led him to a work-rest ratio of 1:1 or even better. Now, in terms of cardiovascular effect, just think of it as 6 days per week of high-intensity interval training. Think of the incredible health benefits that Serge was getting from his training, and his trainees were getting from their training. However, the type of exercise is lifting weights, so it simultaneously shapes the body and builds muscle while giving you a harder workout too. Just imagine the incredible cardiovascular and fat-burning effect Serge and his trainees were getting by doing these 6-day-a-week workouts packed full of volume. It is far removed from the modern recommendations on how to build muscle by training heavier and doing less. This approach was actually incredibly popular back in the silver and golden era of bodybuilding, and it's only recently fallen out of favor in the modern era as everyone is resting 3 to 5 minutes between sets, training with heavy weights and volume almost as low as 20% of what Serge would recommend. Instead of running or swimming, Serge trained. Serge would do up to 3 sessions per day in his pre-contest phases, 5 hours of training per day, leading to him looking ripped and jacked right up until his mid-70s, where he unfortunately passed. Serge Nubret firmly believed that shaping the body was an amalgamation of 3 powers: the mental, the physical, and emotional powers. He said to achieve mastery of oneself, you must emphasize loving what you do, and when those 3 powers work together, you become unstoppable. He said that the mind was a true powerhouse. You're only tired because you want to be tired, was a phrase that I heard him say on more than one occasion. Now, just before we move on, let's handle the elephant in the room, steroids. While Serge Nubret did use steroids, he never once shied away from expressing his vocal opposition to them. He believed that they were an excuse to avoid working hard and spending less time in the gym. For him, dedication and perseverance were the keys to success. The common way of thinking is that steroids allow you to do more and recover from more. And while that's true, Serge also pointed out the other side of the argument, and that is, with steroids, people don't have to work as long or as hard because the steroids do a lot of the heavy lifting for them. So he said for the average man or woman who don't have the advantages that steroids bring, they need to work harder, they need to work longer, which is why he didn't shy away from these long, hard workouts for the average guy, even without the recovery benefits that steroids bring. Serge trained regular people right up until his 70s, and the following workout, which I'm going to detail in this video, was his recommendation to the average man or woman looking to get into shape without steroids. Training for hours was not to be avoided if you love what you do. That was the heart of Serge's training recommendations. Now, every great physique begins with a strong core, and Serge Nubret knew this well. He considered abs to be a sign of good health and a shield against sickness. He famously said, "You'll never see a sick person with sharp abs. 90% of sickness comes from food." Serge's ab training was rigorous but effective. As part of his warm-up, he would perform sit-ups every single training day, gradually increasing the reps until reaching an astonishing 2,000 a day. And if you do some quick math on that, you'll realize that 2,000 sit-ups roughly done at about 2 seconds each, 1 second up, 1 second down, takes just over an hour. This, he believed, could replace traditional cardio. Short rest periods, constant tension, the power of the mind, and moderate weights. These were the 4 pillars of Serge Nubret's training. Firstly, short rest periods were a must. Serge believed in keeping rest periods absolutely minimal, usually 30 seconds, but very often less than that. He would only take slightly longer for large exercises like the squat. This approach maintained the muscle pump. He placed a lot of importance in keeping the blood pooled in the muscle you're training. Constant tension was the secret to unlocking muscle growth. Nubret believed in putting the mind in the muscle, meticulously controlling every rep to maximize muscle engagement. The power of the mind was at the core of Serge Nubret's extraordinary achievements. He loved being in the gym. He once said about building a great physique, if you don't love being in the gym, forget it. Moderate weights. This allowed more volume and better muscle control. He also said moderate weights are more effective than heavy ones and they don't damage the body. And Serge was a testament to that, maintaining his amazing physique right up until his mid-70s when he sadly passed. So stay tuned as we continue our journey into the world of Serge Nubret's training principles. There is a lot of value in hearing completely different opinions, and much of what you're about to hear is completely different from the modern take of lifting heavy, resting a lot, and bulking to unhealthy body weights, then cutting down again to achieve a good physique for just 2 weeks out of the year. Serge's approach was to be a bodybuilder every week of the year, and his training principles are drastically different due to that. So they are worth listening to. So now let's move on to the actual training routine that Serge recommended. I'm going to have the exact sets and reps flash up on the screen. We're going to start with days 1 and days 4, which was chest and quads. Chest was trained twice a week, just before quads. For chest, he would do 6 exercises for roughly 6 to 8 sets of no less than 12 reps. Now, in terms of some of the interesting highlights, the performance of flies were somewhat unusual and different from what Arnold recommended back in the day. He opted to keep his arms almost straight, really putting a lot of stretch in the bottom position. With the cable crossover, he also emphasized high attachments and much straighter arms, very much isolating the chest. For dips, he tried to lean forward slightly, which would emphasize the chest more than the triceps. He may have gotten this from Vince Gironda, who also recommended a forward lean for the dips. And the other interesting thing is he placed a lot of value on the pullover. He really liked the stretching effect on the entire upper body. In fact, he liked it so much, he did the pullover 4 times per week at the end of every chest session and at the end of every upper back session. Now, following on from a short rest, he would then go to quads. Quads, he recommended doing about 4 exercises of roughly 6 to 8 sets for, again, no less than 12 reps. Now, in terms of some of the interesting standouts, one thing he did differently from the modern era is he would emphasize not locking out. So he would purposely use partial reps, mostly avoiding the lockout, but also somewhat avoiding the deep positions of the leg press and squat as well. So that was the chest and quad day, which was days 1 and 4 in the gym. For days 2 and day 5, he would train the entire back side of the body with back, hamstrings, and calves. Now, for back, he would pick 6 exercises from a pool of 10, with the only constant being the first exercise he recommended was always the behind the neck pull down. And the last exercise was, as already pointed out, the pullover. But the 4 exercises in between would be from a pool of 10 exercises, which he recommended. Various things like the front pull down, the close grip row, the straight arm pull down, various types of cable pullovers. Now, the other interesting thing to note was his calf training. Unlike modern bodybuilding, he very much prioritized the training of calves for balance and a complete physique. And Serge actually had a very good set of calves on him. So he trained calves 4 times per week. That was after days 2 and days 5, and also after day 3 and day 6. So for calves, he would have 2 light workouts where he would use reps of 25 and 2 heavy workouts where he would use reps of 15. In general, he used 4 exercises for at least 6 sets each. He started off with seated calves, then moved to standing calves, followed by donkey calf raises, and ending with leg press calf raises. So after that, we did shoulders and arms, and that was days 3 and day 6 of the routine. Now, in terms of interesting tidbits for shoulders, was quite interesting to see his recommendation for the lateral raise. The way that Serge performed lateral raises 50 years ago was actually what we know now in the modern era as Lou raises, because of Lou Serges, the Olympic weightlifter, where actually history shows that perhaps we should be calling those the Nubret raise, because Nubret recommended those back in the 60s and 70s, and he would do lateral raises with his hands ending right above his head. He also recommended the lying side lateral, which is an exercise which has fallen out of favor in recent years. However, I think a reasonable substitute could be the cable side lateral, because we're looking at keeping tension on the delts in the stretch position, which we can't normally get. And the final exercise, which I thought was quite interesting, was a rear delt row. Not something I see used very much anymore, but a highly effective exercise for the rear delts. You do this on a pull down machine. You grab the bar and you simply pull it to your neck using the power of your rear delts. Now, after that was arm training. He kept his volume to only 18 sets of biceps and of triceps each, mostly using supersets. Once again, recommending to keep the pump in the muscle and keep the blood localized in the arm region, which he believes really promoted good growth. So just to finish, let's recap some key points from Serge Nubret's training philosophy. He recommended, in a nutshell, much more work. He recommended, in a nutshell, being in shape year round. And to do that, the vehicle for him to stay in shape year round was lifting weights. He didn't care much for other activities. He didn't care much for running, swimming, walking on the treadmill. He wanted to lift. And up until he was 72 when he passed, he carried on lifting 6 days per week and staying in fantastic shape. These were the core tenets of Serge Nubret's training philosophy, which are drastically different from what we are commonly recommended now, which is why I thought to make this video and keep Serge's training philosophies alive. They didn't just work for him, they worked for all the trainees he trained back in the day and the way he got people into shape. I feel like these lessons from Serge's past should not be forgotten to time. I feel like we should keep this tradition alive because it is so drastically different from what we commonly know now to be the accepted ways of getting in shape. This way may well be better for you. So in terms of what we can learn from Serge, I think for one, we can learn about the power of the mind. Far too many people take the easy way out. They do less, they add a bit of weight to the bar, they use sloppy form, sloppy diets, and the reality is they want a great physique with only a time commitment of maybe 4 hours per week, where in reality they're mostly resting for that. So they're doing perhaps 10 minutes of work 4 times a week, and for that they expect a great physique. Just think about that. Think about that next time you look at a tennis star with a great physique, or a wrestling star with a great physique, or a boxing star with a great physique, and you think, wow, I'd love to look like that. Whereas in reality, you're only performing about 40 minutes of total exercise per week. Do you think that's viable? Probably not. Serge's approach was to train a lot more and to really put some effort into training. We could all emulate that to a certain extent with whatever we can fit our schedule. Doesn't mean we have to increase the training time. All it means is perhaps we have to look at condensing our workouts and just making sure we're doing a little bit more in the gym rather than just sitting around waiting for our next set. Because we've lifted so heavy, we have to rest 5 minutes between sets, accomplishing a fraction of what Serge would. So I would encourage all of you to adopt some of the principles of Serge's training. Lift more, make better use of your time in the gym, compact your training, push yourself, make sure you're working as hard as possible and not just doing a heavy set every 5 minutes and slouching off, thinking that's going to be enough to transform your physique. And if you're not getting results with that approach, then maybe reconsider what you're doing. Modern bodybuilding has moved towards principles which have people in the gym less, bulking up and lifting heavy. This is a recipe to do less exercise, eat more food, and feel pretty banged up, and also not really look in shape for the majority of the year. Perhaps the solution for health, physique, and longevity lies in Serge's approach of doing more and training with more therapeutic loads. And I hope we can keep the principles of Serge's training alive because I think they are worthwhile. Thank you guys for watching. I invite you to like, subscribe, and share the video, and I will speak to you in the next one.